Good morning, viewers. Welcome once again to another exciting episode of Women's View. Today's topic is very interesting: lifelong, thriving marriages, myth or reality. My name is Murenga, and it's a pleasure to have you on the show. I'd like to introduce my guests. To my first right, please introduce yourself.
My name is Sumi Mwai. I'm the founder of Blossoming Marriages, and I'm a counselor, mostly focusing on marriage success.
Okay.
And I'm Angie Murenga, really happy to be here. I am many things, but I am a pastor, ordained minister of God, but I'm also an executive certified leadership coach. I'm an author, and I'm a speaker, and I mentor and coach many.
Excellent.
Yes.
You're very welcome to Women's View. We're happy to have you.
Thank you.
And yeah, let's get right into it. So there are two things we're talking about: lifelong and thriving. So let's talk about lifelong first. Is marriage supposed to be lifelong, or is it something you enter into, then when it doesn't work, you leave, try again? Is it short term, long term, or lifelong? Start with the
It's an
basics.
interesting question, Anne.
Yes.
I honestly believe it depends on the intentions of the person who's getting married. What's their objective as they're getting into marriage? If it's lifelong, then that's what it's meant to be. Unfortunately, a lot of people, I have found that a lot of people go into it saying that they want a lifelong marriage,
Yes.
but internally being everything else but organizing themselves in a manner that gives them the lifelong marriage they say they're getting into. So it depends. What is your intention as you're getting married? Do you fully understand the claims you're making
Yes.
for entering into a lifelong marriage? Are you clear about the commitment you're making? So I think many people would say they're getting into a lifelong marriage, but when they stop to consider the reality of what they're getting into, perhaps they would find they're not quite in tune with that.
Okay.
And I think I'd jump on that and say that's the truth. That it's even when I think about myself, it's that you were not ready. We thought we were ready, but we were not ready.
Yes.
So you actually think that you're prepared for marriage. So you're saying something to yourself, but maybe it hasn't become a reality. And then the other thing I think that's really affecting that, because marriage is supposed to be for life. It's actually supposed to be for life.
Yes, because when you're saying your vows, most people do go to church or to a mosque. They do say till death, which means that ideally it is an agreement that is for life.
Yes.
But you know, when you're getting into it, you never actually think about life. You're thinking about the joys of
and I think also sometimes we get caught up in that moment. So in the moment of the celebration that it is, the excitement that is there, then of course, whenever that happens, with anything that is exciting, reality dawns in. So now the reality begins to check in, and then now you begin to ask yourself, is this what I signed up for? Because I love what Sumi is saying. We hadn't really thought about it before. You hadn't even pictured the whole journey.
Yes.
It's just this exciting part that you're looking at instead of seeing the lifelong thing. And I think I also want to pick up something she said, that there's something I think about. Sometimes people will say, you tell them to stand. So they say, I'm standing, but on the inside, I'm sitting.
Precisely.
So you see, the spirit is also very powerful. So you can be standing on the outside, but they're saying, in their head, they're telling you, it's okay, you made me stand, but on the inside, I'm still sitting, yeah? Where it matters more. So it's a very internal first. On the outward, you can be saying these things. You can even be going through the motions, even wanting to. I mean, positively.
Yes.
But on the inside, there's another conversation that's taking place, which can be a contribution of so many factors, you know? I don't know whether, like Sumi says, I've seen a lot of people, when I think about even the generation that we're in, there are a lot of failed marriages. So,
exactly.
Could that be what is speaking to you? So you are standing on the outside saying, I want to be married and it's for life. But on the inside, there's conversations that are taking place.
There's fear.
Either by what you've witnessed, of what you've seen, and you're like, I'm not sure about this thing. So I think that's always a problem, especially when you enter in sort of, with that, what I sometimes call the exit plan. When you enter with an exit plan, when you enter with a way out, because the question is lifelong.
Lifelong, for life. And life is long, you know.
Life is long.
Because, for example, have you been married? Maybe you can tell us about your experience, how long you've been, and how many years you were at the point you're getting married, so that we can begin to understand exactly how long is this lifelong.
All right. Well, I guess in sharing that detail, I pretty much say how old I am. But I got married at 31, and I've been married, would be 23 years in March next year. So I've been there, and
well
you know, it's interesting, as Pastor was saying, when I got married, at the altar, saying my vows, it was really just repeating what the priest was saying. And I couldn't wait I knew I wasn't going to be pronounced married unless I said the vows, so I needed to repeat after him. But my mind wasn't really into what I was saying. It didn't quite occur to me, the commitment I was making, until way later in marriage, when the difficulties, the challenges of marriage begin to crop up. And I remember one time, I don't know if I ever shared this with you, Pastor, but one time I'd had it. And I got into my marriage with deal breakers, you know, an exit plan.
If this happens, I shall.
Precisely. And because I came from a broken family myself, and my mom had raised the 5 of us by herself after my dad left when I was 13 as a firstborn, I knew it wasn't an impossibility. And then I only had one child. So I don't know. Yeah, you know, I don't know what kind of argument my husband and I got into. And I had it. It was like around 8, 9 o'clock in the night. I strapped my baby on the back, who was about a few months, hardly a year old, strapped her on my back, packed a bag, and I was ready to leave. Thankfully, my husband had come from a different environment, a different marriage background where, you know, how his parents' marriage was solid, and you know, that's where he came from. So I'm ready to hit the door, and he comes for me and asks me, what did you think you were doing when you got married, when you decided to get married? You know, what is it you were getting into? This is not a joke. You signed up for life. And he snatched my bag, and, you know, I didn't know what to do after that, in that moment. But it hit me that really this is not a joke. And that's, I would say that was the first time the reality of my vows practically hit me. Hit me. Yeah.
And those vows are usually actually very, very serious. You know, in sickness and in health. And you never imagine that some of these things happen, but they do happen.
They do happen.
Tell us about yourself.
Wow, for me now, I was married for 6.5 years.
You got married at the age of?
28.
28, okay.
So I was 28, 6.5 years, and I was not ready for marriage. I mean, when I look back now, even with my ex, we really laugh. And when we talk to our daughter, we tell her we had no business being married. We had no idea. We didn't know what marriage was about. That's another thing. You see, because preparation is key. And then also just studying, what are you really getting into? Have you really examined what you're getting into? So I wasn't prepared. And I had 5,000 exit clauses. Deal breakers times 100. And then now those deal breakers were acted out, So one of the things I always say, and I think I've said to women, Sumi has given me opportunity to speak to. She hosts a women's forum like once a year, a big one. I mean, but others, she does other things as well.
Sumi will
but
tell us about that.
Yeah, she will. But I always say, if I had just had the right, I think, preparation, the right equipping, the right mindset, and I don't know why life works like this, but the older you get, I mean, if I got married today, it would be a very different person in that marriage,
you're entering very
with
different
maturity,
mindset.
with mindset, things have shifted. I know the reality of life. This is not a theory, you know. The reality of living life now causes you to make other decisions. So I think for me, I wasn't prepared. So the marriage ended, but it ended, and then when it ended after 6.5 years, it took like another 8 years for me to finally make it official. Why? Because I was a believer. I was a Christian. Now after the marriage broke down, now after 2 years, I think I found myself. Then I found my God. Then now I was like, now how, you know, everywhere the Bible says God hates divorce. So now how do you get into divorce now?
Here you are.
So I did a lot of praying, which I'm glad now when I look back. I did a lot of praying, a lot of fasting, a lot of seeking God and saying, you know, is this marriage going to, what do I do
you know. Yeah, so I did, and I tried everything. Then I said, okay, that's it now. I'm done. So, and I wanted at least the divorce to release me, so that if I would get remarried, I could.
You could,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'm happy that you both actually got into marriage not early, because 28 and 31 is not early. And if that is not early, I mean, okay, it's late, so it's the right age, but yet you're not prepared for it. Where is this you go to? Comes my question. Where is this you go to where you can be prepared for marriage? Because at 28 or 31, you'd think that you're ready to settle down. You've had your singlehood, you've enjoyed it. Now you want to get into marriage and settle down. Where do you go to be prepared?
Me, I think, okay, there's PMCC, which is premarital counseling, Christian counseling. So that happens a lot in churches. But I think it's not only where do you go, but it's the timing of when you go. So a lot of people go to PMCC when they're planning their wedding.
Yes.
So they're not focused. You're not listening. You're more concerned about flowers than you are about what's being taught.
That's so true.
I think the timing, it's true. I'm telling you. And then the investment. Anyway, so first you can find these places where married, like now for me, if it's church, that's PMCC,
Yes.
I'm sure the Hindus have the way they do it in their temple, maybe, and the Muslims have it. There's a way that you can be prepared. But you have to be prepared, but you can't be prepared when you're planning the wedding. You can't be prepared 3 months before the marriage. So even I've seen a lot of even single people, both male and female, even do PMCC without a partner. I have nobody that because you need to understand, just to get an understanding of what marriage is about, you know, because as you go through the different topics, there are things that are going to start opening up, like, oh, I've not thought about that. Like, you don't think there's any need to discuss finances, which is one of the major breakups of marriages, So you really have got to learn about money, learn about, I'm sure they learn about sex, don't they? They learn about power, they learn about, I don't know, the different roles. Because we just go into it blindly, and sometimes our worldview has been formed by Hollywood, Nollywood, or our parents, or the people around us. So we don't have the right formation. So I think foundation is very important. I think you need to go and learn. And even these days, I mean, I'm surprised I'm saying this, but even the internet, it's too much to learn. I mean, when today I Googled 10 reasons why marriages are failing, they're there. So you can begin to research and see what is causing the problems in marriage, and just begin to learn and really know. And I think also, I don't know whether you've asked that question, but for me, I always look at, can I do life with this person? And I always advise people, including myself, because I'm taking my own advice, if a person is presented before you, can you strip everything off them? Everything. Just leave that person with nothing. No titles, no money, nothing. Everything, no car, no house, nothing. And see, can I do life with this person?
The person.
That is it. Because you see, the things that we choose, we choose money can go tomorrow.
It's true.
Health can go tomorrow. For my own parents, that's a reality. When I look back, I mean, my dad is always saying he got into an accident which changed his life and left him paralyzed. The marriage was just young. So you see, that can actually be a reality. So is health going to come in? Are you going to be able to take care of this person? You know, is the person is going to be able to take care of you? So really strip them of all the things that we make marriage about. Strip them of everything and leave that person naked and say, can I do life with this person?
It's so interesting you bring that up, because recently I was with a group of friends, some married, some single, and the issue of whether a lady can marry a gentleman who doesn't have a car came up. So when you're talking about stripping, it's like the people entering into marriage are actually talking about the add-ons which can go. And then based on those add-ons, they make a decision whether to marry a person or not. So basically, you're saying the opposite. You strip down the title, strip down the money, strip down everything, and then you ask yourself whether you can
do life with
this
person.
Wow, those are very, very difficult and hard questions that people need to actually ask before.
Yes. And you know, and preparation, like Pastor is saying, is in the external and in the internal also. You know, that yes, pursue those courses, read, do all that, but do some soul searching also. Internally, who are you? The person you're looking to marry, do they share the same values? Do they share the same beliefs? What's their faith in view of yours? And, you know, begin to consider details of possible compatibility. But then again, I have found that it's perhaps not very easy to contextualize the detail of marriage before.
When you're not in it.
Yeah, when you're not in it.
Exactly.
It's important to equip yourself with as much information,
The
knowledge
theory.
as possible,
Yes.
so that at least you have an idea. But the reality of what marriage is can only be discovered within the marital context.
Okay.
Together with what Pastor is saying about stripping the person, I've also found that within the normal realms of life,
Yes.
if I do work on myself, I can live with any husband.
Oh, that's very
That's the
interesting.
truth. Yeah, as long as, you know, the fundamentals, like for me,
Okay.
faith is a big thing, you know. So who is this person with regards to faith that I'm getting into marriage with?
Yes.
But like in my case, I got married before I knew Christ personally.
Okay.
My husband also wasn't a believer. And it's in the processes of doing marriage, perhaps, that I was even drawn closer to God. Yeah. So there's also that possibility. But if I do work on myself, I have found if I change my view, the realities of the vows I took, if I take ownership of that and align myself, the application of myself into this marriage, then I can actually live with a husband that I married.
And just to ask, does the opposite apply? If I was a husband, if I change myself, I can live with any wife. It works both ways.
I think it's both ways. And I think, especially for the Christian marriage, maybe let me talk about that because that's what I'm more familiar with. A Christian marriage, a successful Christian marriage demands 100% ownership.
That's true.
Okay? So it's what I do with who I am in my role as the wife that matters. Whether he's doing his end or not,
Okay.
I have found is insignificant.
And actually now, ladies, sorry to cut you short, we've actually gotten into the second part of the topic, thriving. Because yes, you can be in a marriage that is lifelong. But is it thriving? How do you make your marriage thrive? Now, I think that's what we're basically tackling. You're basically saying that you can change yourself so that you make sure that in the marriage, it is thriving, irrespective of the other person. Oh, okay. Tell me more about that.
Yes, well, for me, again, my approach is experiential. I do run a program for wives called the Blossoming Marriages Program. And the approach is experiential. So we learn from each other's experiences and the lessons come through that. So the first about 8 years of my marriage, I struggled because, you know, as a struggling young believer, I believed my husband being the head of the family meant he was the one to also take charge and guide the marriage in the direction it needed to go.
Yes.
So I was just an easy rider, as you know, I left everything to him. But I was faced up with the possibility that my marriage could end. And then I realized that I wasn't ready to give it up.
Okay.
And the realization then also came that I needed to take charge and take responsibility. And I didn't know any way to go about that, but to go back to scriptures, because I believe that marriage is ordained of God and He's the one who authored it. I wanted to understand. And I realized that I had a responsibility.
Yes.
Actually, the responsibility for the success of my marriage seemed to point more on me than my husband, and that wasn't very easy to, you know, to accept.
Okay.
But I began teaching myself some of the things that were being taught there, and there was a very quick turnaround.
Oh,
some things were instantaneous, you know,
Fantastic.
the way the responses I would get from him, but also taking ownership, sort of rid me of all the expectations and the entitlement that I had. So, so you know, whether he did what I thought he needed to do or not, I knew that I had no other way but to fight for this marriage and do my bit in causing it to succeed. Now, out of my own personal experiences was born this program, and I have seen marriages rise up from the ashes. So it is possible when one takes charge.
Yes.
We may not have the capacity to change another human being,
Actually,
but if I do my bit, I have the capacity to influence them. There's no way you can be all loving to someone in a healthy manner and they forever remain resistant or resentful towards
you.
And
especially if they had already accepted you to be their spouse.
Precisely. So there must have been,
precisely,
you have a head start there.
Wow, I love it and I'm learning so much. But I was thinking for me, it's that statement that has made a lot of problems for us. You know the statement that, I think it came from Hollywood, that says, you complete me. You see, now that is a very wrong statement because I love what she's saying, because that's what I'm saying. Now I am ready to be a wife and a very good one.
Yes.
Because like she said, it's almost, but there's also what people say, like a centering, Yes. So for me, my center is God, and my faith. But there's a centering, there's a peace that I am complete, me and my God were complete. Exactly. And I'm thinking like even the things that I do, because I'm a teacher around purpose and leadership, is that once you settle the issue of identity, who I am, and then even when you said it, your inside first, even that spiritual sense, your internal capacity or your spirit is settled, whatever religion you are, whatever, we're not talking about religion, whether even you're an atheist, it's okay, but your spirit, your center, your core is centered, then you can do anything. Because I'm just thinking, sometimes I laugh at the things that used to cause me no peace in the marriage. Right now it's a comedy. I would not even flinch. I cannot even move, even turn to I won't even give it the attention, But that time I'd blow out of proportion, give it so much energy. I'm like, even me when I look at myself, like, are you crazy? Calm down,
Like relax.
Relax.
What is that about?
Serious? Can you relax? Time has a way of moving things. Yes. And then even now, because of maturity, you're able to look at a situation and ask why. Like, why is this person behaving like this? People are not normally crazy. So what is driving this? Where is it coming from? Understand the whole background even before you react. But I love what Sumi has said, that first there's a centering of self. And when I'm thinking of in terms of purpose, you need to get your own identity, because even that marriage has a purpose. So what's the purpose of coming together? That's where the thriving comes. So even then, there's a choice. Yes. It is you're in charge of your own thriving. Yes. Whether this one is going to thrive or not. Because sometimes, sometimes I laugh at myself because you want somebody else to do something for you that you can do for yourself.
Sure, yes.
Yeah, including, even if you get to the basics, you can even buy yourself flowers. You can order flowers every week. If what you want is flowers and this man is not bringing the flowers,
you can
order
do
your own flowers, they will be delivered. Enjoy the flowers. It's the flowers you wanted. Or ask even. But you see, but that's the problem.
Maybe you have
women. We have unmet expectations that we haven't said. This is the problem of Mills and Boone and Hollywood and Nollywood and what. So we don't want to say what we want. Just speak it. And also you can do it for yourself. I love the fact that you can do it for yourself. And even maybe then, even if I'm just thinking, because it's just flowers that have come into mind, maybe it's because of the flowers that are around here. But maybe then even then he'll get into the flow. Maybe now he'll begin to supply the flowers because he knows flowers make you happy. But you don't have to have World War III around that story of there's no flowers and I want flowers, So I think the thriving is also, like she says, it's part of your responsibility to find your own internal happiness, to find your own internal center, not to be moved by things that don't need to move you.
That's true.
You just need to relax and let it flow.
But we really need to talk about that because it seems that there are two schools of thoughts. There are those who think that you should have expectations and then you lay them down so that the other person knows them. And then they're able to meet them. And then there's another school of thought that thinks you should not have any expectations whatsoever. Your happiness depends on yourself. Which is which, or do both have a place in a thriving marriage?
Okay. Maybe just before we get to that, I wanted to touch on something Pastor said, and we'll get back to you, Anne.
Okay.
But the fact that there are phases to marriage, it's a learning process.
Okay.
It's a learning process. I think many would quit their marriages unduly.
Too early.
Too early.
Yeah, I think I was one of those, and I've said that.
And I've heard you say that several times. What if you had actually waited beyond, because you're still learning each other.
She said, like Sumi, you said that after 8 years of marriage is when you actually
It hit me.
And 6.5. You see, so still there was a little bit of time to probably just remain in the marriage a little. So people are quitting too early.
You're quitting too early. And it's not going to be easy.
And then you start again.
Merging two units that were single in all their ways into one unit is going to be a challenge. You know, and for some people that takes a year or two. For others, it's 8 years. For others, it's 12 years. Yes. But eventually, the oneness it's in that gradual process.
The 1 + 1 is equal to 1 takes time. It's not immediately it's pronounced.
Yes, yes. Okay. Yeah, so please, Pastor.
And then I don't know, there's something I don't know that's just been triggered by what you're saying about the 1 + 1 taking time and process and everything. Is something, there's a gentleman called George Zara who likes to say that marriage is about serving one another. Every time he makes that statement, I just go into this place and I think it's about serving the other person. It really is. It's not really about serving yourself. It's actually serving up the other person. But on your question on expectations, then I guess maybe are they is it a reality? Can the person actually meet those expectations? I guess, are they discussed? Are they voiced? Are they, you know, presented in a way that can be met? But then you see now, when we make it about the expectation not being met, that's really not right, because marriage was not about expectations being met. It was not about, you're not getting married to meet expectations, you know? And I don't know why, but there's a statement that I was thinking about the reasons why we get married. I guess that's why you have to examine why are we getting married? Because that's why we're having many problems in marriage, is because I think the why has changed. Why am I getting married? And back to my stripping down the person. So a lot of people get married without the same value system, which is a problem. And then a lot of people getting married because of how you can change my status. People get married for economic reasons, for financial gain, so that you can boost me, I don't know, financially. I can, you know, I marry you for what you have, like your money and stuff, so or education or status, or to get me out of a hole. So you see, it's very back to identity. It's not really about yourself. Have you thought about it? Have you internalized it? Have you thought about what this means? You're getting married for something. And that something, what if that something ends? Or what if that something has other consequences attached to it that you were not ready to deal with? This is a problem. So I think people are also getting married for the wrong reasons.
I think it's really critically important that one establishes why they are getting married.
A lot of people get married because they're in love. Is that a good reason, or is it not a good reason enough?
Well, I guess their views, they are varied. But I know many people. I have some friends in the Asian community who met their husbands the day they were getting married. And they have beautiful marriages.
It's amazing, right?
So, you know,
meet on day one and start life together. Wow.
But then again, I believe also that strong emotional feeling towards one individual is God-given. So there must be a role that plays. But it's also very easy for that to be misplaced.
That's true.
You know. So I think self-awareness is very, very important, and that's what Pastor keeps taking us back to. Do you know yourself? Do you understand yourself? And I think love is necessary in the beginning. You know, in the class I ask the ladies whether they would have issues marrying the husbands they're married to now.
Right now,
and they say, you know, mostly they're hesitant to answer that question. And I think that in itself is quite telling.
Is an answer.
But so I believe part of the reason we had that very strong emotional drawing to each other was so that God could blind us
to actually do it. I always say that. I always say it's a trick.
Some of the things, because, you know, talk to the same person who never saw a flaw in this individual a couple of months, or you know, after the wedding, and they're like, wow, I didn't know he does this, I didn't know he was like this.
And probably you knew.
God actually kept you from seeing, because chances are, if you had seen that about the person, you'd have started second guessing yourself and wondering.
That's true.
Yeah, but I would say, even though love may be important and necessary, it's also important, again, to check yourself. Ask God, pray, and practically sift through the love to where you can allow yourself to see some reality in the person, so that you can establish.
Because marriage is an eye-opener. It opens your eyes.
But I think it's also that thing of now is when you start to live together, to cohabit with one another. So that's when reality checks in, you know? And I guess that's also what I'm saying, is that we need to look at that reality before and really try to examine who you really are. And I think that's why you say, as we mature or as we grow or as you go through the process, then you have a very different worldview. And then you can have a lot of peace about yourself and a lot of peace about this institution. Then you don't have to listen to other people, you know, because I think also a lot of people are speaking into, so there are too many voices that are speaking to you. And you're not centered around one, or your identity is not formed around one. For us, it's faith. So you need to like find a voice, find your voice and find your sound, you know? And then it's amazing because that's also an oxymoron, because I also think that a lot of marriages are not working in terms of the thriving because there's nobody meddling enough, you know? And maybe you just need one
mentorship.
Yeah, but maybe you need to choose and be careful about who's speaking into your life still. But have that one person or one couple that's speaking. Because people are not meddling. People are not delving deep. People are not interfering. They can see something's wrong, but everybody stays their business, you know? And that was different. You know, before the whole village used to be in their marriage, be in raising the child. I mean, it was a whole village, very African role, you know? You could be pulled away by 5 of your aunties. They sit you down, they tell you this. The man could be pulled away, but now nobody's talking. I think that's another problem.
That's another
because
isolation.
Of culture.
It's
an isolation, and then you have to figure it out yourself. There's nobody going to sit there and talk to you, or even you are not open to that,
to receiving
guidance, you know. And I was wondering where this was coming out, as I was going to come up. I was preparing. I was saying even the culture, you know, culture has a lot. It affects us in ways that we don't imagine. Because number one, like now for us in Kenya, we have a culture where if I make it financially, then nobody can tell me anything.
Exactly.
Yeah? So even your parents who are authority over your life, because you have money and they don't, now look at that. Now you can't say anything. Now, the parent who doesn't have money cannot speak to you, because now you've become, I don't know, the kingpin of yourself. You become, so that's really sad. That's really warped. That's changed because we used to recognize and respect people in authority, needless of whether they had money or they don't. So you see now that has started defining even parental authority.
Wow, that
so
is
your
very
parents
dangerous.
it is, but it's there. It's a culture that's there.
It's
your
a
parents
reality.
can't even speak to you because you say, I came from, I came to the city, I made it. So you sort of ignore those ones.
And I'm also the one who built the home you're living in.
You're living in, and I give you money maybe every month. So I cannot speak.
So
even if I say something going wrong, me, I'm like, let's just keep quiet. So I think that's a big problem. But I think also the culture of shortcuts. You know, we have a culture of shortcuts because corruption is a shortcut.
That's true.
So I'm feeling like corruption has flowed even into the marriages.
Yes.
Because the reason I'm getting married to you is actually I'm a corrupt person. I'm a conniving person. I have my own things that I'm, you know. So I brought corruption, shortcuts, everything into this marriage. You know, the whole corruption that's going out there in the world, I've brought it right here home. You know, and then now corruption also means if I don't get what I need to get from here, I take a shortcut and I get it from somewhere else. You know, so maybe that will lead me now to having an affair, or you know, it's just a whole myriad of issues. But I'm thinking the culture. What is going on around us is having an impact on our marriages, a direct impact on our marriages and our homes.
Wow, ladies, I'm really enjoying the discussion. And I think we need to take a break now. Viewers, please remember our SMS line is 21144. I'm sure you have lots of questions. Please keep them coming. We'll take a short break, but we'll be right back. See you soon. Welcome back, viewers. We're very, very happy that you're back. Today we're having a very interesting topic. We're looking at marriage. Is marriage lifelong? Can marriage thrive? And we'll just continue with the conversation. We're basically talking about how corruption has entered into marriages, and that's a point that I want us to pick up from. Angie was telling us how that the corruption that we're seeing in our culture has actually infiltrated into our marriages. Please tell us a little bit more about that.
I think it's what we've been talking about. I mean, I'm loving the conversation, the way it's flowing. Number one, when people enter into corruption, is you're not ready to go through the process.
Yes.
So you're not ready to get, let's say it's a tender. We're not ready to go through the process. You have to bribe and cut shortcuts to get the process going quicker and faster, and then to have your own personal gain. Yes. So because of that mindset, we've brought that into marriage. So when I'm getting married, like we talked about love, so maybe one person thinks we're getting married because of love, but the other person is understanding this is a shortcut to me making it. Yes. This person has money maybe, so I'm getting married for the money, and it's a means to gaining something for myself, which is not exposed to the other person. The other person doesn't know that. Yeah, it's clueless. Yeah, so we both have different ideas about why we're getting married. Then when we get into the marriage, more corruption happens. You see, first of all, if there's no exit plan, or if, because I'll keep using like money, money is a good one because maybe it has a power of a hold over you, so you can't leave because of the money as well. Let's say you get into the marriage, it's not working, you can't leave because of the money. So within the marriage, both of you, because it's not both, it's any man or woman, you start finding avenues with which to be corrupt. So let's say you have an affair, that's corruption. It is. Having an affair, you've still brought the corruption. The shortcuts that the world is taking out there, you have brought them here. So instead of trying to work on this marriage, everyone develops their own plan of how we're going to cope with this day. Then we just come back here and we keep up appearances. It's the truth. So we find that the shortcuts the society wants to take, you know, it is now infiltrating into our marriages. Even leaving a marriage is corruption. Because you sat there in front of God, and that's another thing which always amazes me, is that people call God to their marriage. It doesn't matter whether they've been living in sin, come we stay, doing it. They also know, they know what is right, you know? And I always make a joke that they shouldn't be wearing white, they should be wearing something like red or black, but it's okay, let's stick to my story. So you're there. So even corruption, you've brought it to the fact that you have been walking with God, you have been walking with Him. But on the wedding day, everybody wants God on the wedding day. So it's amazing how we were saying, there's something that has formed in our minds that God has to be there. So we'll have a church wedding, but then after that, we'll go to the mosque or to the temple, but we'll invite God to that day, but not to the rest of the marriage. That's also corruption. How do you even use God now? Exactly. Because you're even using Him. You say we want Him to be here, we'll wear white, we call the people, we want His joy and happiness. We want the joy, happiness, and want His blessing. We want Him to endorse something that He's not even party to, because before we were Christians, He was really not party to that story. It's because after we became maybe Christians or found faith or found centering, that now we can say God has ordained and ordered my steps towards this marriage. So we've allowed what is going on in the society to enter into the marriage, because it's our mind. Is it our mindset and our worldview? Is I can get out of this marriage quickly. If this marriage doesn't work, I can find coping mechanisms in here to make it work. And if it doesn't work completely, I just exit and I go. But you made vows. You did. You made vows that said you were going to stay and you were going to try.
And a vow is a covenant or a promise. Can you change it if somebody doesn't keep their agreement? You know, what you were calling deal breakers.
But a vow is not a contract. A contract you can change. You could go back and renegotiate. A contract, a vow is a covenant. And a covenant is lifelong. You have put your all into all covenants revoked though.
No, and let me just tell you now my own experience. You know, I was like, oh God, you know this, I don't like to share too much. I think people come in the right to say, hey, Pastor Angie, you share too much. But I was thinking, sharing is what helps
other people.
It drives other people. It's now taking the selfishness out of it. But I remember I told you I took 8 years of praying and fasting before I actually now went for the divorce. But let me tell you, to break the covenant. Now spiritually, even as a spiritual person, I'm telling you to break that covenant. It took everything. And it was so hard, and I would be with God and I'd be crying with Him and I'd be talking to Him and He would tell me the covenant of marriage, despite, you see what was shocking me, despite that we were not Christians when we met, this was not a Christian-induced marriage where God speaks. Despite all that, we were living in sin. Despite all that, God came to the wedding, and it's amazing. He's actually in the marriage. He actually enters the covenant. He honors this covenant, despite all the circumstances that point to the fact that He shouldn't even be here. But to break the covenant took a lot. It took a lot of prayer, a lot of it took a lot from me, and I could tell. I was wondering, why is all this happening? Because marriage is a very powerful covenant that is, I would like to say, almost impossible to break.
Okay.
It's a very serious covenant.
So are you now trying to say that even if you divorce, that it's, number one, very difficult, and that you still will have issues with the person after? Oh,
okay, let's talk about the facts in the world.
Get in and out.
But let me talk about the facts in the world. The world says now, let's even remove faith from it.
Yes.
That the second marriages are the hardest. They break up more than first marriages. Third are even worse.
Wow.
Those are just the statistics.
Yes.
Without any covenant. Now, we're not even talking about covenant. Once you get married to a person and you get remarried, the second marriage, the chances of getting more broken are more, and then the third one is even worse. So it still advises that there's something about this first marriage that was there. And then I don't know, as you're talking about covenant, because I wanted to speak as well, but I'm thinking, okay, God said that's why he made a covenant with himself, because it could not be broken now. The one he made with himself.
Yes.
Because now making it with man can break the covenant.
Yes.
But then again, I look at the thing, there's a place in Matthew where he says that divorce is allowed because of the hardness of our hearts. Yeah. So he actually did give reasons where this thing can be broken because of the hardness of your heart. And then even for me, I must say, there was a lot of grace, and the Bible says, I think, where sin abounds, grace abounds more. I've never liked that statement, but you can understand it, that where sin abounds, God extends his grace. So with everything, there's grace. So I think, like for me, I've been through a process of soul searching, spirit searching, connecting with God, a lot of prayer, a lot of fasting to understand that yes, now mine was broken, but it's a very difficult thing to break despite the circumstances.
Yes.
It's something that is not easy to get out of.
And
Asumi,
I think
what do you think?
You were also asking Anne whether it's possible to never have contact with that person.
Is divorce an option? Is it a good thing? Is it easy?
I just listening to Pastor Angie, it's clearly not an easy thing to do. And I don't know that you can ever quite wipe out your experience with that person. And I imagine it's even more difficult if you had children.
Exactly. That's true.
You know, in our context, we say that it's two families coming together. So there'll be people you've become close to on his end of the family because of the virtue of your being married to each other. So I think it's a very, very difficult thing to ever get rid of.
Okay.
I've had illustrations given of two papers that you bond together by glue and then try and tear them apart. You find that there are pieces of either on the other. So it's not an easy thing to overcome, certainly not. And children make it all the more difficult.
That's true.
Yeah. And like, I think it was Pastor, or you're the one, Anne, who was going to say that it doesn't get easier with the other person because you find that they have issues themselves. You know, there's never going to be a marriage without challenges. So if that is the fact, why not stay with the one you are
and try and
work at it and believe, by the statistics that it does get easier as you get to know each other better with time.
Well, that's very interesting.
And then I'm always wondering whether marriage is supposed to be somewhere where your character is formed and it is shaped.
Yes.
I think that's also something else that we forget. That it's a place where it has a purpose, and it's also to shape your character, to make you stronger, to give you strength, to also, life is not, it's not selfish. It's not life is about me. It's life is about us together and creating this relationship, this partnership, bringing up children together. So it's more than, I think, what we have made it. So there's a mindset we have about what marriage is, but there's a reality to what marriage is. And then if you go into God's word, then there's a way that marriage is. And I always give for me, I think the SI unit is Ephesians 5:21-33. That's, if you want to know what marriage is, go in there.
That's what it
Go
is.
right there into marriage. And then I was amazed. You know how women have this inherent need to be loved? Because I know I have, women have an inherent need to be loved. I was so shocked to find it in the word. It's actually,
right
I was
there.
like, oh my goodness. It's right here, because the woman is given the instruction to submit to her husband. First of all, no, let's start with the right way. Everyone is supposed to submit to God. It starts submit to God first, then submit to one another out of reverence to God. And I feel like out of that revelation You now submit to each other. Then after you submit to each other, the wife is supposed to submit to her husband in everything. But I like God because he knows women. It's not just submission in everything. We always forget the last part. As a service and to the Lord. So you're serving the Lord. You see, now we just take submission, then we fight submission.
Yeah.
But it says as a service to God.
Lord.
So it's actually the Lord that you're. So when you submit to your husband in everything, it's a service to God. Then now here comes my favorite. Husbands, love your wife as Christ loved the church. And then when you think about what Christ did for the church, the love was sacrificial. It was giving all. He gave he didn't even leave anything behind. And that's how women want to be loved. They want the husband to love them like as Christ loved the church, with everything. So it's actually in the word. I was shocked. It's actually there. It was not created by Hollywood. Love is there. And God is expecting the husband to love the wife with everything that he has. And then, I mean, I think emphasizes 3 things. It says 3 times about how you love your wife as Christ loved the church. It talks about love your wife the way you love your own body. And you know how men love themselves.
We do.
So the way they love themselves is the way they're supposed to love their wife. And then I think it says, the last thing is I think the one of leaving. Then it says again, husbands, love your wife now as Christ loved the church and gave himself up. So this love is serious.
It's very, very serious.
It's very such a serious love.
Actually, it's very sacrificial.
Very.
It is
And it's
sacrificial.
difficult because you can imagine it is something that Jesus, when he was dying, actually said, take this cup away from me, but if it is your will. Which means that he would have opted, like, it was getting to be very difficult.
Yes. And, I think what all that comes down to is the fact that successful marriage can only be other focused. It's not about my selfishness. And focusing on the other person and ensuring that you understand who that person is, meeting their needs, based on whom you understand them to be. But together with that, because you're also an individual with needs, understanding who you are and understanding what your needs are, then communicating, because you're the one responsible for the success of your marriage, then having understood what your needs are, finding the best way possible to communicate those needs to your spouse so that he in turn
can be able to at least try and meet them.
Precisely. Because as God expects me to serve my husband, I also have a responsibility in helping him serve me right.
You can give him, you can guide him on what to do.
I can guide him.
So that he's not buying you chocolate instead of flowers.
Precisely.
And we're talking about probably very flippant things, but there are other deeper, other issues, other needs that surpass flowers and chocolates,
Yes, and even those trivial things usually end up being the big things because, they pile up and then before you know it,
resentment builds up.
Precisely.
Are there exceptions, by the way, to this conversation? Are there things that can happen that could cause the marriage to not to be lifelong? We talked about hardness of heart.
I think also violence. If your life is in danger, then that is a reason. At least I think most people would encourage like a short-term separation. So violence is a big one. But for me, I think also
and violence exactly. I wanted, when you talk about abuse, most people think about violence, physical abuse,
but there's emotional abuse.
What is emotional abuse, and is it a deal breaker, or is it something that you can also work on? Remember, we've talked about you being able to work on work on yourself, so that you can remain in that situation.
I think abuse is at different levels, but it's all abuse either way. But life-threatening abuse, I would say, is more physical.
That's true.
You don't want someone coming in rage and doing something that was not intentional, but ended up being fatal. So if you're in such a marriage, my encouragement usually is step aside and allow for the person to receive whatever help he needs to resolve his own issues. But the flip side of that is that there's also the possibility the marriage could never come back together. So as you do step aside, it's important that you're open to that or you're aware that things could end up that way, even though it's not your choice that the marriage ends. When it comes to emotional abuse, I think it depends again to what extent, but I believe that one who's properly empowered within themselves, if they have resources within themselves that can help them stand up against that kind of abuse, it's possible to fight for the marriage while within it, as opposed to be outside it. Okay. But if the person happens to be a bit wanting in self-esteem, in internal resources, then again perhaps there's need for that separation so that both spouses can receive the help they need, with the aim of eventually bringing them back together. Wow. I have found though that it's easier to fight for a marriage while you're inside than when the risks are greater when you're outside.
Okay. So if you want it to thrive, it's better to make it thrive when you're inside it, as opposed to...
Do your best. You know, Pastor Angie was earlier talking about meddling, but I think
these are your parting shots, ladies?
Yes, the lack of meddling. I would say that sometimes it's even the people who are in the marriage who don't meddle with the marriage themselves. They're too careful not to rock the boat. And sometimes rocking the boat is necessary so that you know what you need to resolve to be able to get to the next level. But then to help yourself in that, it's important to surround yourself with the pro-marriage people so that the voices that you're listening to are ones that are helping you.
All right. Imagine there's actually no time to be able to take a parting shot. Okay, that's a little...
I guess maybe just be vulnerable. I think one of the things I like to say is be vulnerable even to each other. Just picking up from what you say. You really need to be vulnerable with each other, and then you need to know that you can actually do it. It's actually possible. So don't get into the mentality that marriage doesn't work. Marriage works. Marriage is good. It's lifelong,
and it can thrive. Amen. Thank you, viewers. There you've had it. Marriage is lifelong. It can thrive. So let's work on our marriages and let's have happy marriages. Thank you so much for being with us today. Remember, our SMS lines are still open, 21144. Please call in. We can be able to talk to you. Thank you.